Just 4 hours ago, 10 p.m. my time, I was out walking my dog and I was out on the dirt trails. To my delight, it was not cloudy, which means it's prime stargazing season. And every time I look at the stars, see that hundreds of thousands just in my area due to the little light pollution, I fall in love all over again. And this is a very human reaction. For ages and ages, human beings have looked to the heavens and been filled with wonder and awe. And it's hard to look up there and wonder and not wonder, where did all this come from? How did this all come to be? This is the age-old question of the cosmos. How did this all come to be? And that's what we're going to talk about in this session. Now, there are actually two primary views that have been held throughout all of history. One view, which was actually the largely held view in most of the secular world prior to the 20th century, is that the universe is actually eternal, that it had no beginning. Now, we're here because we want to find what caused the universe, what the beginning was like. So if it had no beginning, then we're just wasting our time here. Luckily for us, there's another view, which is actually the largely held view today by secularists and non-secularists. And this is that the universe did indeed have a beginning. Take the late theoretical physicist and cosmologist Stephen Hawking, who said, "Almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang." Let's just stop there for a second. I said the BB word, the Big Bang. Now, you might be asking, wait, do we as Christians believe in the Big Bang? Isn't that just like a naturalistic explanation for the origin of the universe? Isn't that kind of like a threat to us? I promise I'll get to that question a little bit later. For now, what I want you to hold on to is just that one of the former leading atheistic minds is admitting the beginning of the universe and time itself. Take cosmologist Alexander Belinkin, who said, "All the evidence we have says that the universe had a beginning." So once again, we're left here at the universe having a beginning, which is really big. Now, what are the implications of this? Oops. To figure that out, we're going to check out the Kalam cosmological argument. It was created by Muslim philosopher Al-Ghazali and was popularized by Christian philosopher William Lane Craig. It goes like this: whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore, the universe has a cause. Now we can see that if this argument holds up, the implication is that if the universe did indeed begin to exist, it needs a cause. So first, let's see if this does hold up, if it is a true argument. Now, only three things can be wrong with an argument. First, a premise or premises must be missing. Second, a premise or premises must be incorrect. Or third, the conclusion does not flow directly from the premises. Now we can see that this argument is very simple. Nothing is missing and the conclusion flows directly. So all that could be wrong with it is that a premise or premises must be incorrect. So we'll start with the first one. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. This is known as the law of causality. It basically states that whatever occurs has a reason for it occurring, has a cause for it occurring. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. Now, we don't really need to give a whole bunch of evidence for why this one is true because science itself depends upon it. If we deny this, we're cutting off the branch we're sitting on. So because we like science, because that's how we understand the world, we can't deny this premise. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. If that wasn't so, then we couldn't do science because stuff just happens here and there without a cause, which really keeps us from understanding the world by causes. So we can't deny this one if we want to hold to science. So we have to admit that this one is indeed a true premise. How about the next premise? The universe began to exist. I'm going to give you 5 pieces of evidence why the universe did indeed have a beginning. First, the universe is expanding. This was discovered by Edwin Hubble in 1925. Through his telescope, he saw that the light was shifting. This means that everything out there is moving further away from us. Now, that means that the universe is getting bigger. If we could go back in time, if we could rewind, we'd find the universe to be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And if we go far back enough, we'll reach a point where there is no universe, no space, and no time. This is the first piece of evidence for the beginning of the universe. Second, the cosmic microwave background radiation, discovered by astronomers Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson on May 20th, 1964. This is basically just all the resulting radiation that we find as a result of this cosmic beginning. Third, the second law of thermodynamics. This states that energy goes from an ordered, usable state to a disordered, unusable state. Now imagine it this way. When you plug gas into your car and then start driving, the gas is running out. That's exactly what's happening in the universe. We're running out of energy. Now, just as the gas in your car, unfortunately, can't be running out forever, so the universe, it can't be running out of energy forever. The more we run out, the closer we get to that empty tank. And in the same way, if we go back in time, the closer we get to a full tank, to 100% capacity. So we know that if energy is running out, there must have been a point at which it was full. Now, some of you might be getting ready to say I'm denying the first law of thermodynamics, which state that energy is never created or destroyed. Does that kind of make it difficult for us to believe that the universe was created and that we're running out of energy somehow? Hold on. The first law describes what happens in a closed system. It's exactly because of this we can trust our observations of the energy running out. This means that no new energy is being fed into our closed system, and no energy from within the system is popping out just randomly. The amount in the closed system remains constant. And it's not the energy itself that we're running out of, it's the amount of usable, ordered energy we're running out of. Check out this illustration. In the first system, we see 6 orbs of usable energy, the positive orbs. In the next one, we find 4 orbs of usable energy and 2 orbs of unusable energy, the negative orbs. As we go on, and all the way up to the last one, we find that continues decreasing the amount of usable, and the amount of unusable energy keeps increasing. And that last one with 6 orbs of unusable energy is not a place we want to be. That's the empty tank. Now, in both ways, we see that if we reach the end, that's the official end. It can't go any further than that. And if we go back in time, we reach a point where it's 100% capacity of usable energy. We can't go any further back than that. So this is another piece of evidence for a beginning. And the first law and the second law are actually a really piece of strong evidence together. It's not that the first law contradicts our observations of the second law. It actually confirms them. So that is the third piece of evidence. Next, Einstein's theory of general relativity. It states that space, time, and matter are correlative. In other words, one or even two can't exist without the others. You need all three together, which means all three came into existence at the same time. You might say, okay, hold on, but this is just a theory and you're using it for evidence? Well, obviously, I don't need to say that this is Einstein. Literally, he's an Einstein. And also, this theory is confirmed to the 5th decimal point, the 100,000th place. So there's good reason to believe it. The last piece of evidence I want to give is a philosophical evidence. If there were an infinite amount of past events to this moment, we would never get here. Now, that might be a little hard to understand. So I'm going to bring in one of my hobbies. I love Marvel movies. I've always loved Marvel movies. Now, something special that Marvel does is it includes post-credit scenes. These are scenes that come after the credits. Maybe they're connected to a future movie, or maybe they're just comedic clips connected to the movie you just watched. Either way, you have to get through all the credits, all the names of contributors in order to watch it. Now, sometimes the credits seem infinite, they seem endless, but luckily they're not. Maybe they last 5 minutes. Now, if the credits were endless, if a name just kept on appearing after each one forever and ever and ever, you would never get to see that post-credit scene. Because what is a post-credit scene? By definition, is a scene that comes post-credits, comes after the credits. If the credits never end, then the post-credit scene never begins. Well, the same with the history, with our history. If our past never ends, if it's infinite, if it just keeps going on and on and on, this moment, this present would never begin because there would always be another moment in the past before now. So we would never hit this moment, and yet here we are. Therefore, there must be a limited amount of past events. It cannot go on and on forever, pointing back to an absolute beginning. So the Coulomb cosmological argument is indeed valid. The universe did have a beginning, and that means it does need a cause. Now, before we go to investigate this cause, I want to give you the more robust version of the argument. We could go through the whole thing and unpack it like we did the other one, but I just want you to understand this first premise because it's really going to help us down the road. For the sake of time, we're not going to go through the whole thing. The first premise says everything that exists has an explanation of its existence, either in the necessity of its own nature or in an external source. So basically, everything can be explained in its existence by its own needing to exist, that it couldn't fail to exist, or that exists dependent upon something else to bring it into existence. It depends upon an external cause. Now, the problem is that the universe could not fail to exist. It does not exist by its own necessity because it could fail to exist. It's dependent upon something else to bring it into existence. That means it exists contingently. It's dependent upon an external cause. Now, the question often comes up, okay, so the universe needs a cause, needs an explanation of its existence. But if you posit that God is that explanation, that he is that cause, aren't you just kind of pushing it back a step? Don't you need an explanation for his existence? Don't you need a cause for him? And that's why I really wanted to give you both arguments, both cosmological arguments. The first one just said that whatever begins to exist has a cause. God has no beginning. He is eternal if he exists at all. Therefore, according to that argument, he would not need a cause because he had no beginning. Second, the question assumes God was created. Created gods are by definition a delusion, just something from our own mind. If God exists, he's not a delusion, he's not created. So once again, we see that he had no beginning, therefore he needs no cause, he needs no creator. Now, the second argument didn't say everything needs a cause, but everything needs an explanation of its existence. There were two fields. One, that exists by its own necessity, that it has to exist, and two, that it depends upon something else to bring it into existence. We saw that the universe depends upon something else to bring it into existence. God isn't in that camp. He's in the camp of something that has to exist. It could not fail to exist, it needs to exist by its own necessity. He, as the ground of all reality, could not fail to exist. And something else, the fact is that something must be eternal. There cannot be an infinite regress of causes. You see, think back to my marble illustration. Just as there can't be an infinite amount of past events to this moment for us to get here, so there cannot be an infinite amount of past causes to this moment. Otherwise, we would not get here. Yet here we are. Therefore, there must be an uncaused first cause. There must be a limited amount of causes prior to now. Something must exist eternally. Either the universe exists eternally, or something other than the universe exists eternally. Now, we know that the universe does not exist eternally. We have good evidence to believe it came to exist at a beginning. Therefore, something beyond the universe must, by necessity, exist eternally. Now, the question is, what is this cause? What exists eternally? What exists beyond the universe? Before we get there, I want to explain two views, materialism and naturalism. Materialism states that all that exists is material. Naturalism states that everything can be explained by natural causes. Now, if these views are true, this really simplifies our search quite a bit, because we realize that this cause must be material and natural. That really makes it a lot easier for us. It simplifies it a lot. Now, the question is there good reason to hold to these views? Well, that's why we're here. We're going to investigate the evidence. We don't just hold to these off the get-go because they exclude everything else. It's like taking a multiple choice quiz, but already preconceiving that the only answer that could be correct is A. Now, if that turns out to be the correct answer, then you got lucky. Congratulations on the guess. But if the answer is B, C, or D, then you just narrowed yourself to one answer, and it turns out the answer was wrong. So that's why we're really going to take the time to, in the analogy, observe the question carefully, and in this case, really observe the evidence, so that we can actually find the correct answer that the evidence is pointing to. You see, even if you look at the question, but you already preconceive that it can only be A, then no matter how counterintuitive it seems, you're always going to pick A. We're here because we want to find what the evidence is pointing to. So we're not disregarding that the cause could be material or natural. We're not going to hold to these views by excluding all the others either. We're going to be open to either possibility, material or natural causes, or some other type of cause. We're going to follow the evidence where it leads. The fact is, if we follow the evidence, then it's going to point us to the truth, whether it's this or something else. So there's no risk in opening ourselves up to the possibility of other options, of other answers. A while back, I watched a documentary by National Geographic on the Big Bang, on the origin of the universe. And in it, it was stated, before the Big Bang, there was nothing, literally nothing. And the black void of space is something, so is time. So they're saying that space and time literally did not exist before the Big Bang. There's no space, no time. They literally mean nothing. Astronomer Robert Hurt made an appearance. He stated, the Big Bang was not just an explosion of material into an empty universe that was sitting there waiting to be filled. It was the explosion of space and time into existence to begin with. So once again, we see space and time did not exist. They literally mean nothing existed. Now, what is nothing? It's kind of hard to imagine, isn't it? When I try to imagine nothing, I put myself out where there are a few distractions. So I just put myself out in space because it's a little bit darker. Then I start trying to delete stuff to make it simpler to hopefully get closer to this nothing. So maybe I'll start by deleting the planets. There we go. Next, the galaxies. Okay, we're getting kind of close to nothing. There are just a few lights left, the stars. There we go. This is a good place to think, isn't it? Very simple. The question is this nothing? No. This is empty space, just as in reality, this is an empty slide. That is not nothing. We mean literally nothing existed. Nothing of this world, nothing that we know to exist of this world existed. So this is the great riddle, the riddle of all time. Well, indeed, the riddle of all space, time, matter, and energy. We know that from nothing, nothing comes. Nothing is literally no thing, and that can't bring about anything, much less everything. And yet we have good scientific evidence that the universe came from nothing. So how do we solve this riddle? Well, we know that nothing can't bring about everything. As Dr. William Lane Craig said, to claim that something came into being from nothing is worse than magic. When a magician pulls a rabbit out of a hat, at least you've got the magician, not to mention the hat. You see, we know that nothing acting upon nothing will always, without exception, result in nothing. I'm going to say that again. Nothing acting upon nothing will always result, without exception, in nothing. So we know that it can't just be nothing that existed. See, they say nothing because they mean nothing of this world existed, not space, not time, not matter, nothing. So maybe it's not something a part of this world that existed. Maybe something that's beyond this world, apart from this world existed. Then it doesn't have to be nothing. Then it could be something. And something can bring about something, but nothing cannot bring about everything. You see, we have an Y here. We have an effect. For that Y, we need an X. We need a cause. The question is, what is this mysterious X? The answer might be a vacuum. Sorry, not that kind of vacuum. This kind of vacuum, a quantum vacuum. Dr. Lawrence Krauss posited that a quantum vacuum could be the solution, because not only can it bring something out of nothing, but it does always bring something out of nothing. Now, whether a quantum vacuum really does create something from nothing is another subject that we could talk about at another time. But there are problems with this theory. First, a quantum vacuum is not nothing. We literally mean nothing of this world existed. So a quantum vacuum does not equate that nothing. Second, we saw that energy cannot exist eternally. It also points to needing a beginning. Therefore, this just doesn't fit the bill, and this theory fails. How about the late Stephen Hawking? He said, because there's a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Now, what does gravity do? It pulls things together, right? It's because of gravity that when I accidentally drop my phone, it's going to fall to the ground. It's going to fall to the floor, to the earth, and probably get another crack on it, unfortunately. But if there's no phone, no ground to pull it to, then nothing really happens, does it? Gravity depends on the prior existence of these things in order to truly work. Natural forces don't create. As Dr. Frank Turek said, impersonal forces, which we call natural laws, merely govern what is already created, provided agents don't interfere. So you see, if these things don't exist, then we can't observe the law of gravity acting in anything. Gravity requires these things to already exist in order to truly work. Or take what C.S. Lewis said, the laws of nature produce no events. They state the pattern to which every event must conform, just as the rules of arithmetic state that the pattern to which all transactions with money must conform. If only you can get hold of any money. For every law, in the last resort, says, if you have A, then you will get B. But first catch your A. The laws won't do it for you. So once again, we see that natural laws are the patterns we observe. We can't observe those patterns if there's nothing to observe them in. They won't get an A for us. We need an A to begin with. So in response to Hawking's theory, Professor John Lennox, a mathematician at Oxford, said, a nonsense statement remains a nonsense statement, even when written by a world-famous scientist. And this just goes to show that you don't need to be someone with a PhD in order to really understand these topics. It really comes down to philosophy. Just understanding these statements, understanding the world, just really taking time to think about it. And in doing so, you can participate. You can come onto the court and participate in all these conversations, all these scientific debates. So knowing that those theories failed, what do we know about the cause? How can we simplify this a bit? Well, we can use a bit of logic. Something that does not exist cannot be the cause. Let's just imagine that a detective comes to your house He's a cold case detective. That means he investigates cases that occurred many years ago, many years in the past, which makes it really hard because the case has gone cold. The clues are old. The testimonies are old. Now, he might start by asking you questions like where you were on such and such a date. Now, it turns out that this murder that he's investigating occurred 2 years before you were born. After seeing your birth certificate, what's his reaction going to be? It probably wasn't you. No, he's going to say, okay, it definitely wasn't you. You didn't exist yet. If you didn't exist, you can't be the suspect. You can't be the murderer. You have to exist in order to be able to do that. Well, same with the universe. Something that did not yet exist cannot be the cause. It cannot be the suspect. Only something that did exist can be the cause. So what do we know didn't exist? How can we narrow those things down? What had a beginning? Well, we already saw that space, time, matter, and energy had a beginning. Therefore, they cannot be the cause because they didn't exist yet. Now, this arena is what we call nature. This is the natural world. Therefore, the natural world did not exist. It itself was created. Thus, the cause cannot be natural because nature itself didn't exist yet. Now, to understand this point, let's imagine that we're playing hide and seek. I'm going to count, I've counted to 60, and I'm going to start by searching the bedroom, for example. Now, because I'm very detail-oriented and organized, I'm not going to leave that room until I've searched every place someone could be hiding. Now, let's just say that I preconceive that you can only be hiding in the bedroom. If I have concluded that you can only be hiding in the bedroom, then I'm going to spend all my time and energy searching the bedroom. Even if I don't find you again and again and again, I've already concluded that you can only be in there, so I'm never going to leave the bedroom. Now, the problem is, if you're hiding in another room, then I'm never going to find you because I'm never going to leave the room, which means I am never, ever going to win the game. So that's the problem that we're found with here. We've searched the room of nature, and it's not just that we haven't found the cause yet that's natural, but the fact is that the cause can't be hiding there in principle. We already saw that nature itself didn't exist, therefore it can't be the cause. That's just logical. Now, if we spend our time searching the room of nature again and again and again and never leaving because we've already preconceived that the cause can only be in that room, then we're never going to win the game. We need to go search the other rooms. So the cause cannot be natural. The cause must not be natural. It must be beyond nature. We have a word for that, supernatural. And I'm not the only one pointing to a supernatural cause. Listen to what astronomer Robert Jastrow said. Astronomers now find that they have painted themselves into a corner because they have proven by their own methods that the world began abruptly in an act of creation. And they have found that all this happened as a product of forces they cannot hope to discover. That there are what I or anyone else would call supernatural forces at work is now, I think, a scientifically proven fact. Or take cosmologist Alan Sandage of Carnegie Observatories, who said, "We can't understand the universe in any clear way without the supernatural." Now, this doesn't prove theism, much less Christianity, but I'll tell you what it does do. It disqualifies both materialism and naturalism. Now, we didn't just preconceive that the cause can't be material or natural. We didn't just throw these out the window just because that was our preconceived beliefs. No, we investigated the evidence. We used our observations and logic. And that's what led us to conclude that it can't be a material and natural cause because those things didn't exist yet. So the fact is that these both claim that everything is material and all causes are natural. If just one thing exists that is not material, and if just one thing exists that is not natural, if just one cause exists that's not natural, then both of these fall apart. They're not true anymore. And we found that at least one thing exists that is not material, and just one cause exists that's not natural, the cause of the universe. Therefore, these are both incorrect. They're both false. And we used science to find that out. These are both pretty much doctrines held by some scientists that they affirm that this must be true, that everything must be material, all causes must be natural, not because of evidence, but just because those are their preconceived beliefs. But that's not what science is about. Science is about discovery, about understanding the world, about finding new things. And so for the sake of discovery, what science is all about, we can let these go. To hold on to them would keep us from discovery. It would really be to stop science. Now someone would say, okay, but these are really foundational to science. We need to affirm that everything's material, that all causes are natural. Otherwise, we can't do science. The fact is, no. There are actually only two requirements to do science. First, we must believe that objective truth exists, which is what we talked about last week. If you want to see that, you can find it on our YouTube channel. You see, objective truth is what we're searching for in science. And second, truth pertaining to the physical world is discovered through human observation and reasoning. That's it. We believe in objective truth, and we find it by using our observations and reasoning. To add anything to that would be embellishment. And the fact is that affirming the existence of the supernatural is actually not not unscientific. The fact is that science finds its roots in theism, not atheism. People expected law in nature because they believed in a divine lawgiver. People expected order in nature because they believed in a divine orderer. It's true that both theists and secularists accept the reality of the physical world. Remember, we weren't denying that a material and natural cause couldn't exist. We, as Christians, believe in both material natural causes as well as supernatural causes. We affirm both. So whatever the evidence points to, that's what we're going to believe. But secularists restrict all reality to the physical world. So even however counterintuitive it seems, they only have that letter A on there. They only have that number 1 in the test. So no matter how counterintuitive it seems, they're just always going to punch that letter in. See, that's when it becomes lazy. When you only have one answer on a sheet, let's imagine you have a quiz, there's only one answer. You're not going to read the question. You're not going to read through the information. That's going to be a waste of time. You're always just going to punch in that same thing. And even if you read through it and be like, I don't think that fits so well, you're always going to punch that same one in because it's the only option you got. As theists, we're open to both options. So if anyone's going to find the cause and it turns out to be supernatural, it's going to be us. So we used science, not our preconceived beliefs, but science to conclude materialism and naturalism to be false. So we can let them go. As John Lennox said, even if you restrict science to natural explanations, science can still give evidence to the supernatural when it shows that no natural explanation is forthcoming. Or take what molecular biologist Douglas Axe said. Ironically, the inadequacy of the old school perspective, i.e. naturalism, perpetuates the old school work by guaranteeing that the goal of complete knowledge will never be reached. See, back in my analogy of the game hide and seek, it's because they preconceive that the suspect can only be hiding in the bedroom, that they're never going to leave that bedroom. They're going to spend all their time and energy in that bedroom. And the fact is, if the cause does turn out to be hiding in a different room, as we turned out, find that it is indeed hiding in the room of the supernatural, they're never going to win the game. They're always going to be stuck in that room. It's not until they realize that the cause might be hiding somewhere else that they might step out of that room and actually make a discovery, actually find the cause, which we found to be supernatural. And that's how you win the game. Now, some might say, but doesn't science have to be observable, testable, and repeatable? The answer is actually no. That's empirical science. That's the kind of science people do in a lab. What we're doing here is forensic science, also known as origin science. This is the kind of science people do with historical events, like what a detective does. You can't directly observe historical events because you weren't there. You can't go back in time and observe them. And the fact is, historical events are testable and repeatable. You can't take it into a lab and remake it. It only happened once. So how do we do forensic science? Well, there are two things we use. First, we observe clues from the past, left behind from the past. We reason from effect to cause. We can conclude that if this did indeed happen, we'd expect these certain clues to be left behind. And then we observe the clues that we do have on hand and try to figure out what is the probability that we would have these clues if such and such was the cause. So that's what we work with. We work with clues and try to reason back to the cause. Second, we assume uniformity, that the past works like the present. We only understand the present, so that's how we understand the past. Now, some might say, okay, I got you now. We don't observe any supernatural events occurring now in the present. So that means supernatural events didn't occur in the past either. Haha. Actually, no, not so much. Now, whether supernatural events occur in the present or not, that's an interesting conversation. We can have another time, but that's just kind of a red herring. We don't want to really go into that right now. For the sake of conversation, let's just say, sure, no supernatural events occur in the present. But the fact is, we still know from the present that Nothing resulting in everything is not a natural occurrence. That's not natural, which means it's beyond nature, which means it's supernatural. Because we know that in the present, that that's how things work right now, we know that the same thing happening in the past would also be a supernatural event. So what do we know about the cause? What features can we draw up? Here's what we got. Here are the qualities we figured out. The cause must be supernatural because nature was created. The cause must be spaceless because space was created. The cause must be timeless, also known as eternal, because time was created. Because it exists timelessly, exists changelessly, just because it's something that is, it just exists. That's how it is. It must also be uncaused because we saw that there can't be an endless regressive causes. It must be the uncaused first cause, the unmoved mover. It also must be immaterial because matter was created. It must be powerful in order to create the universe, and must be fully actualized. That means that it's always been powerful because it exists changelessly and it's timeless. It's always been powerful enough to create. It's always been ready to create. It's without limits, full capacity, which we have another word for that, infinite. And lastly, it must be personal. Why personal? That seems very random and just kind of not connected to anything I've said so far. Well, by personality, we mean a conscious free agent. That must have been something that was aware, that was conscious, and it had free will. I often walk my dog by this small pond. When the temperature is below 30 degrees Fahrenheit, the pond freezes over. You see, the cause is the temperature below 30 degrees. When that cause is present and prepared, the effect, the frozen pond, is there as well. Let's just say that the cause is present and prepared for 30 minutes. Then the pond will be frozen for 30 minutes. Or say the cause is present and prepared for all eternity. So the pond will be frozen over for all eternity. Now, this is where this is getting us. The cause of the universe was always ready. That's what means to be fully actualized. It's always been powerful enough to create. It's always been ready, present, and prepared to create. As such, we would expect the universe to be eternal as well, but it's not. Therefore, the cause must have had freedom of choice, must have had free will in order to choose. See, an agent acts free from circumstances. The circumstances of a fully actualized cause results in an eternal universe, but the universe is not eternal. So the cause must have been free from its circumstances, must have been a free agent with free will to make a choice freely. Only persons have free will to make free choices. Therefore, the cause must be personal. So once again, here are the qualities we have. Supernatural, spaceless, eternal, changeless, uncaused, immaterial, powerful, fully actualized, and personal. Now, what does that make, well, I should say who, because it's personal. Who does that make you think of? Yeah, God. That's what we mean by God, isn't it? Now, some might say, oh, that's just God of the gaps. You're just putting God on something you don't understand yet. Give enough time, we'll find out what that really is. No, this isn't God of the gaps. It's not that we lack evidence for something else. This is clear evidence for God. Let's say a policeman comes by your house and says, hey, we're looking for this guy. He is 17 years old. He's male. He has dyed red hair. He speaks English, Spanish, and French. He's a missionary kid in Spain. You're going to be like, oh, I know that guy. That's Ash Leatherwood. You're not going to say, I just lack evidence. Give enough time, we'll find someone else that actually points to. This isn't actually pointing to Ash. Point to someone else. We just lack evidence for that so far. No, that's clearly pointing to me. Well, it's the same with this. It's not that we lack evidence for it to point somewhere else. This is clear evidence pointing to God. Now, I promised to answer something before about Christians and the Big Bang. What is our response to the Big Bang? Well, himself a Christian, Dr. John Lennox, who has 3 PhDs, he's the mathematics professor at Oxford, said, the term Big Bang is essentially a label put on a fascinating mystery. It is used by scientists to express their belief that the universe, more accurately space-time, had a beginning. That's it. We often assume so many other things that it's a naturalistic explanation to the origin of the universe and all this, so much other stuff, but all it really is a beginning. That's all it points to. It's a beginning. It's that there was nothing. Something happened and everything came into existence. Now we already saw that nothing can't be the cause. That something beyond the natural world, something supernatural with all these other qualities pointing to God, is that cause through science and logic. That's what we found. So the Big Bang just points to this beginning, and it's actually powerful evidence for God. See, that's all the Big Bang is. It describes what happened, a beginning. A beginning happened. It doesn't describe how, as we saw, that it points to God as creator. It doesn't explain why. You see, to explain why, we need intentionality. We need free will. And as we saw, the cause is personal. It made a free will decision to create. It had a desire to create. There's intentionality, which is really what we're going to talk about next week. Intentionality in the universe, fine-tuning in the universe. There's clearly a will, a desire in the universe, a purpose out there. Now, we're also going to talk about other explanations, possibly the multiverse theory, but that's really what we're going to talk about next week. What we found now is that it is indeed pointing to God as creator, or as far as what the evidence is pointing to what we've looked at today. So let me leave you with that. The Big Bang describes what happened, a beginning. That's it. And actually pointing to, it's powerful evidence pointing to God as creator, and we find that there's intentionality as well, which is what we're going to get into next week. Now, I'm not the only one who thinks so. Take Robert Wilson, the co-discoverer of the cosmic microwave background radiation, which we talked about earlier. Certainly, there was something that set it all off. Certainly, if you're religious, I can't think of a better theory of the origin of the universe to match with Genesis. Or take physicist Edmund Whittaker. It is simpler to postulate creation out of nothing, divine will constituting nature from nothingness. Or take Arno Penzias, the other co-discoverer of the cosmic microwave background radiation, who said, "The best data we have are exactly what I would have predicted had I nothing to go on but the 5 books of Moses, the Psalms, and the Bible as a whole." Lastly, take Dr. Norman Geisler and Dr. Frank Turek, who said, "Either no one created something out of nothing or someone created something out of nothing." So the Big Bang is not a threat to Christians. It actually turns out to be a really powerful evidence in the arsenal of evidence for Christianity. Now, this doesn't get us directly to Christianity. It doesn't prove who Jesus Christ was, obviously, but it is pointing to theism, which in turn supports Christianity as a theistic worldview. So don't let the idea of the Big Bang scare you. Just understand it for what it is, a beginning, which actually points to God as creator. So just a recap of what we wrote today. There's strong evidence for the beginning of the universe. It is not eternal, as much of the secular world believed prior to the 20th century. And we found that because as a beginning, it also needs a cause. We saw that materialism and naturalism are disqualified because at least one thing exists, the cause of the universe, which is not material and is not natural. And we saw that the cause must be supernatural, spaceless, eternal, changeless, uncaused, immaterial, powerful, fully actualized, and personal. Have we just solved the age-old question, the age-old riddle? I think that it's been solved for quite some time, but too many people have overlooked it for a long time. King David wrote in Psalm 19, 1-4, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world." So looking up at the incredible cosmos, as we're filled with wonder and awe, what is the answer to the age-old question of the cosmos? Where did this all come from? We saw the scientific evidence. We saw where it points. What's the answer? The heavens declare the glory of God.